first game, we have bolstering in this dungeon as far as I know, so it's going to be interesting to see how the teams play around that affix specifically, because Freehold is a dungeon where you usually see those huge pulls, but with bolstering it might be a little bit more difficult to pull that off.
Yeah, Freehold's definitely one of the dungeons where we see kind of two differing strategies depending on what the affixes are. When it's bolstering, we tend to see, like we're seeing here from Wunderbar, triple Hunter comp, just to make sure that they can deal with consistent damage throughout the dungeon. Of course, if it wasn't bolstering, we'd be seeing some DK stacking, but because we're in this bolstering affix, we're seeing a lot of Hunters coming out from both teams, and already just differences in pull sizes. Wunderbar going for that similar pull strategy that we've seen throughout the entire year so far, whereas it looks like Goosey Bad's going for a slightly smaller pull.
Yeah, definitely looks like a bigger pull. Wunderbar also committed their Bloodlust for this pull, while Goosey Bad is holding on to it. Now, in the past, we've seen teams do the dungeon so quickly that they would save the Bloodlust for the last boss. But it looks like Wunderbar definitely does get a second Bloodlust off in this dungeon. And yeah, as you mentioned, they also get a lot more percentage here, as they just now finished off the pull with 18%.
Yep, so big difference in trash percentages like we just mentioned, just a lot more trash committed on the side of Wunderbar, but like you also mentioned, they don't have Bloodlust for the boss here. I imagine Goosey Bad is going to be using that Bloodlust on the boss, and you have to remember that on this 21 affix, things scale up tremendously from the 19 that we were seeing in our normal cups. These bosses, everything in the dungeon has about 24% more HP and damage value, so that's 24% more damage on every single target ability. Of course, offset by the fact that they now have more corruption resistance and gems on top of that, so they can maybe run a little bit more verse for damage reduction if possible. But everything becomes significantly more dangerous, because, of course, with the scaling that we gave classes, they get a lot more damage, but their survivability doesn't really go up that much.
Yeah, and it also looks like they're running a different strategy here. We see Goosey Bad adapting to this new strategy we've seen on live servers being played a lot on really high keys, where the boss is being pulled onto this corner basically, and the melees are standing outside of the arena. So whenever the Azerite shot is being casted, they line of sight the shot behind one of the fences. So this is why the boss is positioned this way for Goosey Bad. While Wunderbar, on the other hand, they are using this old strategy, and Zelia is just tanking the shot instead of line of sighting it.
You saw that shot took Zelia down to 8% HP.
Yeah.
You can live that on Fortified, definitely not on Tyrannical, though that could have been really bad. But of course, you can see the big difference between running that third Hunter versus running a Rogue. The single target damage from the Rogue just really can't compare to Hunter. We've seen Beast Mastery Hunter really show up a lot recently, especially with the Corruption Vendor being added to WoW. Of course, when they can stack all of those percentage stack corruptions, they can get a bunch of crit and haste on top of what they normally run. BM just becomes such a consistent single target class that they can really outperform just about every spec in the game. So that's why the Triple Hunter is so powerful here.
Yeah, and it looks like Wunderbar is engaging the second boss heal. Well, as you can see, Gingy is not actually here with the group. Gingy did go to the Ring of Booty to start the event, because it is quite a long RP until the pick spawns, and therefore you have the Hunter just walk off. Basically, he's doing the Rogue's job, and Goosey Bad on their side is running that Rogue for this job, but it will mean that they'll have less damage overall, just because what Syra just mentioned, Hunter just overall gonna do more damage compared to a Rogue.
Yeah, it's just way better in general. Now I'm curious. I want to check out our gear and talents. You can check that out with the link in the description, by the way, guys, if you want to check out the MDI Companion. Something that's come across for a lot of the players, they've kind of there's differing builds based off of what they feel like they need to run for the dungeon. So something that I've seen a lot of the monk healers run in specific for some dungeons is, instead of running full damage in terms of gushing wounds, they actually stack versatility. Because not only is the damage not really that significantly different in AoE and single target, but you just have something like 30% damage reduction the entire time. It doesn't look like that's what Zelia is running right now. He's more stacking gushing and expedience right now. So maybe they just don't think that's necessary in this dungeon, but that's definitely something that we're going to see in some of the more damage-heavy dungeons coming out later on, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like Hante is running the versatility build with the versatile amplifiers. And I looked at the damage from both of the healers on the first boss, and it looked very similar. I think Hante even did a little bit more single target damage compared to Zelia. So definitely very similar damage in those two builds. And as Tyra mentioned, you just get the extra survivability, which really does matter in some of those level 21 keys on Tyrannical. But looks like Wunderbar did finish off the boss, and they also pulled some trash on top of the boss at the very end, and making sure they don't bolster the boss, and now they're up to 30% trash. Unfortunately, Fragments is going down on their skip, though.
Yeah, you got chain hooked in there. I don't think that's supposed to happen there. I think he got hooked out of his camouflage there, so not quite perfect in terms of execution there. Xaylia should be able to get a res off pretty easily here, but that's going to be a little bit of time loss for them. But from what we can see so far, they're still cruising. They're still 16% ahead in trash count right now, and with Goosey Bad just now getting the boss down, those 5 seconds on the bard shouldn't amount to much as long as Wunderbar stays clean throughout the rest of the dungeon.
Yeah, and one more advantage here for not having a rogue is that they can pull those Crushers on top of Ludwig, because the Crushers, they don't really cost them any damage for Wunderbar because they don't have any melee that need to walk away from those AoEs on the floor, right? All those hunters, they're going to be able to continue damage while all of this area of denial is happening around the Crushers. While on the other hand, Goosey Bad has the rogue, and even though the rogue does have an increased range because he's outlaw, he's still going to lose a little bit of damage from just having to run around it, dodging it left and right.
Yep. You're going to see rogue just kind of have a lot of issues here. They're not going to be able to do much, especially if they go for this similar pull with the Crusher. But Goosey Bad's going for an entirely different pull here, just pulling a lot of trash on top of the Crusher, not going into the Ring of Booty right away like we saw from Wunderbar. This is going to be, like you said, still a difficult pull. If that Crusher does its AoE around, the Rogue's kind of going to have issues and difficulty doing a lot of damage. So you're going to see Hunters in the Warrior doing a lot of damage, and you're going to see the Rogue underneath the healer for a lot of the pull like we're seeing, unfortunately, on their side.
Yeah, definitely a big difference in damage here because rogues just don't scale as well as hunters do with the corruption basic. That's the biggest issue with the damage difference here from hunters to rogues. And we see Wunderbar did now down Ludwig. They are doing another pull here. I think they pulled even 3 trash packs on top of each other. Bolstering Menace is so incredibly important for these kind of pulls because not only does it become super difficult if you bolster a lot of those mobs at the end for the tank and for the AoE damage that they do that is not avoidable, but on top of that you also just lose a lot of time if you get a bunch of bolstering stacks like you see on some of these mobs are here.
Yeah, and remember, we're 21 fortified, so these mobs have a lot of HP, probably something like 4 or 5 million HP each, and if you start bolstering them up, even though they're at 5 to 10% HP, if they have like 6 bolstering stacks, they could still have several million HP. So you really have to make sure you're perfect with your management. Now, something that we see a lot on Trothak, especially with the triple range comp, they do pull Crushers on top of Trothak. Now, for some reason, I think it's Z-axis things in this dungeon, the Crushers don't actually bolster the boss if you kill them on top of the boss. So this is an incredibly efficient pull, especially on 3 targets. It activates that rapid reload trait that hunters run, lowering the cooldown of their main damaging ability. Damaging cooldown, rather. So this is an incredibly efficient pull. They can really get a lot of boss damage out here. They pretty much have their Aspect of the Wild up the entire time, so they're doing a lot of damage here.
Yeah, the only problem here is that Xaylia won't be able to do a lot of damage, but that's going to be worth it for sure if you run those triple hunters to get that extra damage increase. Xaylia is even getting some damage in, as you can see, him being in melee range here, just spinning around, and even some more mobs are being pulled on top here. We saw the neutrals being pulled and a trash pack as well. This is actually a very dangerous pull. You can see how much damage the whole group is taking, and then on top of that they also have the Grievous here. They want to make sure they kill everything very evenly so to not bolster Trothak or any of the other mobs.
Yeah, I mean, it was just perfectly planned, right? Like I said, the Crushers don't really matter too much. They're not going to bolster the boss or any of the other mobs. But then once the boss reached about half HP, they decided to pull the rest of the trash in. And this is just good for bolstering management, right? If the boss is at like 5 to 10% HP when those trash mobs start dying, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You just have to make sure they don't get one shot by the shark toss. As long as that doesn't happen, the bolstering management shouldn't be an issue here. And you can see everything is slowly getting whittled down. Just perfect execution here from Wunderbar.
Yeah, very well done. And they pulled the perfect trash group into this as well. There's no harpooners, which would make this pull almost impossible, right? There's no one who's getting hooked into the trash. The only mobs they had were scrappers, which are the ones that are fixating people, and those are not really a problem for their setup because they have the soothe, which just gets rid of it, and they have 3 of them. So, and they also have stuns, of course, from Xaylia and from Now. Therefore, there's no problem with that fixate, and now they are moving on already, not even 10 minutes into the dungeon, and they're already on their way to the last boss.
Yep, and I would assume since they have 4 awakened mobs still alive, that we're probably going to see some kiting from Wunderbar here. We're going to see Xaylia hopefully running across that bridge with the 4 Wicked Mobs behind him. And that's even more impressive to think about here. Because remember, we're on 21
I'm not sure if
now.
they will.
Oh, they might not.
They didn't clear the trash, right?
Did they?
I'm not sure if they cleared the trash that was in front of the bridge. Maybe
I wonder now. It looks like they're
otherwise-
going to get 100% trash percentage here, right? This is 100%
yeah,
100% trash
probably.
percentage. Yeah, so
Yeah,
they're definitely going to be kiting. And now the thing, the boss isn't going to last that long. It is fortified. They should be able to burst it down pretty quickly. And you can see the Bloodlust is off cooldown at about 15 seconds, so that'll be ready right when they pull the boss. And I mean, this is ridiculously quick. They're going to be on 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 30 seconds when they actually end up engaging the boss. This could be like a sub 12-minute run right here.
Yeah, this is actually incredibly fast. You see, they also, yeah, they get 100% here with the Ravager pack that they triggered at the very last second here. You saw all of the traps coming out by the hunters. They trapped the higher or the different HP mobs. This was actually very, very smart. So basically, they pulled all of the trash that had the same amount of HP together, but they CC'd the Ravagers because the Ravagers would be killing some of the mobs too early and therefore bolster the rest of the trash. So they CC'd the Ravagers and the different HP mobs and killed the rest of the trash. And once the rest of the trash was done, they engaged the Ravagers and they finished off the rest of the trash. So this was really smart by them. And now we see Xaylia starting to kite those 4 awakened mobs while the rest of the group is fighting Harlan-Sweet.
And you can see like the meticulous setup for this pull, right? Xaylia popped all his personal cooldowns to make sure that he took enough damage to gain enough healing aggro on the 4 awakened mobs, so that there's absolutely no chance that the 3 hunters could ever pull healing aggro off of Xaylia here, giving himself plenty of leeway and room to make sure that they can pop their exil, pop their healing potions, make sure they never have any chance of gaining any aggro. So Xaylia is just free to run in circles here while his team deals with the boss. Harlan-Sweet already down to 50% HP, and of course once it's 30, he takes double damage. So they're pretty much already done with the fight. None of their health bars have even really moved.
Yeah, and I mean, it is Grievous, right? But as you mentioned, they only get the damage when they get the AoE barrage. And yes, you saw 2 of them just use their acceleration to get rid of that Grievous effect on them. And they should be totally fine to finish this off. They also have the turtle available in case they do need it. And of course also have health pots available. So yeah, just pretty incredible run by Wunderbar here. They did have this 1 death coming in on Fragments, which really didn't cost them as much time. Xaylia dropping really low though. If Xaylia does go down, it could still mean a wipe, even if Harlan-Sweet is below 30%. But if the healer goes down, it can cause a wipe really quickly.
But he's not going to go down, and Harlan-Sweet is going to be going down here for Wunderbar, and they're picking up where they wanted to leave off. Again with the first map in a completely clean series here, or rather, Freehold here, rather.
There you go. Are you good?
I got it. We're good. We're getting back into it. It's been a bit.
I was gonna say, we're getting back into it, and like you mentioned, Wunderbar hasn't lost a step as they take that first game victory. And Tettles, this is exactly what we want to be seeing out of our, defending champions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that both teams actually looked really good here, and you could tell how much prep Wunderbar put in by just how their bolstering management looked inside of that freehold. So basically that was an 11.5-minute freehold, I think. But whenever you see bolstering is added into that dungeon on a 21 level, that's blazing fast compared to what we've seen even in past. Like, even on a 19, even though the guys had less corruption resistance and no sockets, the damage differential is going to scale faster than the health of the mobs is going to scale faster than the damage that they gained by having that. But an 11.5-minute run, even on a 19, would have been spectacularly fast. So this was just an immaculate run by Wunderbar.
Yeah, without a doubt. And really just, we start seeing a little bit of differences as well, and I think that was one of the most interesting things you pointed out throughout the match, Nagura, is we're starting to see some differences on how everybody's building for specific dungeons, whether they're going with more versatility, whether they're going to stick to that extra damage. You'll have to start seeing where is everybody kind of differing, because they've had 2 weeks of kind of hiding away what their strategies have been without not wanting to share any of it.
Yeah, I think this is a big reason why this is going to be so interesting, this global final, because if you remember the very first week of the first cup that we had this year, everyone was playing different comps, everyone was playing different strategies, because people couldn't really look at what everyone else is doing, right? So everyone has to come up with their own strategies and with their own ideas of how the dungeon should be played perfectly. So there's just going to be some differences in strategies and differences in gear. and so on. And that's why I think it's going to be incredibly interesting to see how these teams handle all of it. And Wunderbar is showing us such a fast freehold really on bolstering is already impressive.
Without a question. Tettles, what do you got to break down for us throughout this game?
Ooh, we're gonna take a gander at immaculate bolstering management. So first off, we have the first pull by Wunderbar. They get 18% trash count inside of this first pull. I would say that this is a fairly common first pull, but the real crux of the bolstering management from both teams actually is how they are pulling these giants, these crushers. So basically the crushers will get bolstered by mobs around them whenever they die, but the crushers themselves, whenever they die, do not bolster other mobs. So they're taking what is normally a pretty inefficient mob from both teams and adding it into multiple pulls. So like you saw, Wunderbar pulled it into Trothak and Ludwig. Goosey Bad doing something very similar. They also had it into like a Harpooner pull. And you're taking those mobs that are typically inefficient and pulling them into high health targets because they don't bolster and because you're able to get count in a more efficient manner. And then on top of that, Wunderbar doing a very typical kiting of the obelisk strategy, Zalia just making that look picture perfect, even hitting Goosey Bad with the BM Hearthstone channel at the very end of his kiting path, if you saw that. So it was just a great run all around.
Yeah, and again, what we come to really expect from our defending champions as well. But let's start talking a little bit about Goosey Bad as well, Zyro. What do you think was just like the missing element? Or was it just them saying, okay, well, we know we're going up against possibly the best team that MDI has ever seen. We're going to do our best, but we're going to be prepping for later rounds.
I mean, it's tough to say, right? I mean, going into the MDI finals as the 4th seed, going up against, like you mentioned, possibly the best team we've ever seen in the MDI it's a tall task, and you have to really question whether or not it's worth practicing the first round matches against them, right? Maybe you can come up with something pretty significant that'll have a chance to beat them, but there's definitely a possibility that they decided, you know what, we're probably not going to beat these guys, and we should spend more of our time practicing for the lower bracket afterwards.
That's right. Well, the next round we've got coming up is going to be King's Rest, and we've got Tyrannical, Raging, and Explosive Nagura. Ugh. This is going to be tough.
Yeah, that is actually going to be tough because it is at 21, so with the increased level and Tyrannical as well, it can definitely cause some issues for those teams because the bosses in King's Rest are just known to be to do so much damage on the team with the Spit Gold on the first buff, and then you also have the Severing Axe on the third boss as well. Now, we've seen them run racials with the dwarfs to get rid of those, to make it a little bit easier to heal, but it can still cause a lot of issues. And on top of that, you also have the Raging and the Explosive as well.
That's right. There's going to be a lot for these teams to deal with, especially as dungeons are continuing to start scaling up as well. And were you noticing anything else, Zyro, in terms of corruption that some of the teams are running? I mean, I know we had like triple hunter, so it was pretty much all severe. Anything that is standing out for the tanks or healers past the gushing versatility?
Then the main thing that I think we can point out here is that every single one of the hunters that I can see is not running the Skitra bow anymore. They're not running that cooldown reduction corruption. They're just running the Zoth bow, the 485 gun rather, and then just running full stack corruptions, crit percentage, haste percentage, mastery percentage, just really taking advantage of the kind of ridiculous across the board stat scaling that hunters have.
Yeah, so realistically, the reason that they're going to be running the gun is because it is just significantly more AoE damage whenever you are pulling really big. It's same with the Masterful Corruption. Masterful gives them basically way better AoE because of their Primal Instinct traits. So it really makes sense as to why they're running that. I don't think it comes as any surprise to either Zyro or myself. Probably Nagura doesn't know a ton about Hunter.
Tettle's been studying up on the Hunter, and we've also been studying up on some of these bosses, Nagura. King Dazar, absolutely deadly with a peak of 7 lives claimed at one point.
Yeah, and I mean, what I'm the most surprised about on this statistic here is the average completion time, 3 minutes 16. And of course, this is for 19 dungeons, right, from the cups. So yeah, this boss just takes a really long time. And I think part of the reason why it takes them so long is because most of the teams are playing 4 obelisks on top of that last boss, which is just incredibly dangerous. And of course, it also takes a long time to finish off all of these awakened mobs. So yeah, and we'll see if both of those teams decide to play 4 obelisks again on that higher keystone level and the tyrannical affix.
Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, while we've seen a lot of lives and big wipes going on in Dazar. Most of the time, though, the wipe percentage, the average number of wipes that we really end up seeing, Zyro, is very low. A lot of very successful clears of this boss. Doesn't seem like it's going to be as painful as some of the other end bosses that we're going to be seeing later on in the tournament.
That 0.06 average wipes comes out to about 1 in every 16 runs ends up wiping on King Dazar here. So he's not that dangerous. I'd really like to see what the first boss difficulty is, because we know that Spit Gold, especially on Tyrannical, can start chunking people. So let's see how these teams are prepared for Tyrannical King's Rest.
That's right, round 2 coming up between Wunderbar and Goosey Bad. Let's get into it.
All right, so this is the last chance for Goosey Bad to continue this series. They need to win this game since it is a best of 3. Goosey Bad now also switching to that triple hunter setup, which we've seen in King's Rest a lot, just because it's such a single target heavy dungeon, and hunters are just known to be incredibly good for that specific dungeon. We see an interesting skip attempt coming up by Wunderbar here, as Xayah is getting feared. Since they are playing Alliance here, they don't have this the Blood Elf ratio to get rid of those, and they don't have any other dispel like a Master Spell or anything like that, so they have to deal with these minions differently.
Yeah, and it looks like they're just going to be running through and shadow melding off these constructs here. Goosey Bad did not deal with those shadow adds like we saw Wunderbar deal with. So that's going to be a little bit of efficiency saved up for Wunderbar later on when they want to start chaining in those Guardians to the next few pulls. Goosey Bad's going to have to figure out a clean way of dealing with them later on, so we'll keep an eye on that difference here. Of course, the difference in dungeon progression right now is that Goosey Bad gets to start pulling these trash mobs earlier. And already we're seeing another difference from what we saw in the 19s earlier on from Goosey Bad, but can't speak too soon as Wunderbar has decided to say, you know what, we're still going for it on 21. We're pretty much pulling the entire room and committing our bloodlust to it and AoEing it down with those hunters. You can see now is topping the damage meters on that Prot Warrior here.
Wow, alright, so they pulled the whole trash in the first room together. Now did start kiting, because now they're all raging at the same time. This is incredibly dangerous, because any of those Deathly Chills going through now will be very difficult for now to survive. I think they timed the Spell Reflect perfectly here. They were having now leap away once they were out of interrupts, and then when they were enraging and now had to Spell Reflect back up, he was going back in and then Spell Reflected those Deathly Chills on the Witch Doctor. So very well done by them, as they're up to 20% trash now, while Goosey Bad decided to handle this a little bit slower and do it in 2 pulls instead of 1.
And that's really opened up the dungeon already for Wunderbar here. They're already pulling the boss, while Goosey Bad is just now engaging the final trash pack in the room, so any time behind that Wunderbar was that has just been completely caught up right now. They're already on the boss, they're already cleaning down these 2 Guardians on top of it. Now, another advantage that triple hunter comp brings to this boss is that you can aspect of the turtle those initial Spit Gold debuffs, so you don't actually have to worry about cleaving down any of those gold adds that spawn during the fight here, and that's just so much nicer. You can spend all of your free time cleaving the boss now. Now, if they do get any Spit Golds that go through, they can just hunter trap them to not have to worry about dealing them for another minute. So this is just a great comp for dealing with this boss and only making sure you have to focus on the boss.
Yeah, they actually got a little bit lucky here on Wunderbar's side, as they got all Spit Golds on all different hunters. So they got the perfect value out of immuning all 3 Spit Golds at the start, meaning Xayah could do a lot of damage here as well in melee range without having to heal the hunters. Now, of course, they're out of aspect of the turtles, and therefore Xayah does need to heal the Spit Gold. But it looks like it's not a big deal at all, as he's continuing to do damage, up to 40k DPS coming out of that Mistweaver Monk, while Goosey Bad, on the other hand, now is also fighting the Golden Serpent and also those 2 constructs that they've pulled on top.
It wouldn't surprise me to see the freezing traps come out here, but honestly, with how quickly this boss is going down, they could probably just DPS him down before the blobs can even get there with maybe like a Ring of Peace or something. That should be all they actually need. But there you go, freezing traps coming out now. They won't have to deal with any of those animated golds. And yeah, they could just single target the boss now. Just perfect execution, although like you mentioned, a little lucky with how they got 1 Spit Gold on each hunter initially, so they actually don't have to DPS the golds at all. Kind of nice for Wunderbar here.
Yeah, definitely. We do see Goosey Bad did save their Bloodlust for the Golden Serpent, so they used it on the pull with the constructs as well. While of course Wunderbar did commit their Bloodlust for that initial trash pull that they did. They are now downing the boss. Goosey Bad not even that far behind, considering that they used 2 pulls for the trash compared to the 1 pull on Wunderbar's side. It is a tyrannical fight, so it is definitely close to a minute. I would say that the difference still is in favor of Wunderbar, but there's still a chance for them to get back, as Wunderbar is now fighting the Gauntlet here.
Important to mention is that since it has been a while since we've had a King's Rest or any dungeon in the MDI, really, of course, on our tournament realm, the King's Rest order of these this gauntlet is fixed, starts in the back left and then goes counterclockwise, so they'll be dealing with the trio next, then of course King and Queen, and then finally the Raptor pet ad as well. And we'll just see them slowly work through that. Of course, while they're dealing with that first trash pack, well, actually, yeah, there we go. The Guardians are just now coming in here. They were tagged by Zalia a little bit earlier. So they'll be cleaving down these two Guardians with that next trio and just being efficient with the trash gun once again. This King's Rest strat has really just kind of become perfected over the past few cups.
Yeah, and one thing, to be honest, that I haven't really noticed that much yet was explosive. Because on that big pull that we saw on Wunderbar, there weren't actually that many that went off. So it looks like the Hunters are actually doing a really good job dealing with those.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the power of the Hunter right there, just super clean cleave. Now, it looks like one of those Guardians is a little bit higher, but they're going to be able to deal with it before the next pack spawns anyways, so just really great execution coming out. Honestly, from both teams here, Goosey Bat is putting together a pretty respectable run too. They just didn't quite go for that first room pull that we saw from Wunderbar.
Yeah, and I mean, it is incredibly risky as well. Now we see the minions of Sul actually reaching Goosey Bat, so those minions that Wunderbar dealt with at the very start, they had to deal with now. Meaning they lost a little bit of extra time having to deal with those, but didn't look like a big problem for them, as they're now moving on to that second gauntlet with the trio, as you mentioned. And one more thing that you gotta worry about here is raging, but with this triple hunter comp, having free suit to get rid of that raging is just so good. Of course, you need to make sure they're assigning it properly, because Soothe is being used and put on cooldown if you use it in a mob, even if you don't dispel on Enrage. It's not like a normal dispel. If you use a normal dispel, a friendly player dispel, and that person doesn't actually get cleansed from a debuff, then your dispel does not go on cooldown. But if you use an offensive Soothe, and you do not dispel an Enrage, in fact, it still goes on a 10-second cooldown for a Hunter and Druids, and therefore they want to make sure they assign it properly so that they don't end up having a mob that is still raging.
Yeah, that can be a real pain if you don't have everything perfectly planned out, but I would hope that with 2 weeks of practice that all of our teams would have that perfectly planned out at this point. Would be a little weird if they weren't. Now, of course, once again, we're seeing Wunderbar skipping the second obelisk as well, so both of the first two obelisks have been skipped on their side. Do you think that they could potentially be going for a 4 obelisk with the final boss here?
I do think that's what they're planning to do for sure. We've seen it on a 19, and it already felt really difficult then. But with the increased gems and increased damage that they're doing, I think it's definitely doable. It is risky for sure, but I think they can pull it off. And we saw them skip the construct here on the bridge. I think it was Zalia, which, to be honest, is a bit risky to have your healer pull it to the side. But this is just a small little damage gain again, because the Hunters could walk through immediately and immediately start doing damage on this pack that now pulled together. While if it was Hunter that was doing the skip for them, then he would arrive a little bit later and therefore they would lose more damage. So slight little gains here, damage gains, by having the healer pull it apart, and they also now engage Machimba on top of having all of these constructs here.
And that was a slick skip. They essentially skipped a trash pack, but only using the healer's Shadow Meld. So they have their Shadow Meld later on if they wanted to, dodge any casts or skip more trash. So that was just clean from there. And like you mentioned, the Warrior's a dwarf. He couldn't have Shadow Meld skipped. He probably would have had to commit a death there. So not having to commit that, just a little bit of extra clean execution from them there. Great to see from them. Just even small skips like that are perfected, make a route look so much better. And we're seeing a difference here from Goosey Bat here. Pulling Samurek back under Chaos, the Fear guy, of course. Maybe they didn't find a way to deal with skipping the Purification Construct, or they're not as comfortable pulling 4 Awakened Mobs on top of the final boss. Not really sure. I'm assuming we'll see later on if Wunderbar does go for the 4 Awakened Mob pull. But just slight differences in strategy here, and if Wunderbar is able to pull this off, they're just going to have a faster run in general.
Yeah, for sure. One difference in comps I've just been seeing as well is that all of the Hunters on Wunderbar are actually running Night Elves, while Goosey Bat is all running Dwarves, which we've seen Dwarves a lot in this dungeon just because of the fact that not only can you get rid of the bleed effects, so the Severing Axe, and also the bleeds from the Berserkers later on, but you can also get rid of the Samurek Fear debuff. So if you decide to pull Samrak on top of the last boss, you can get rid of those. But it looks like Wunderbar is using the Night Elves. I'm not really sure why. It could be because they want Feign Death and Shadow Melt, or they have some other strategy in mind where they need the Night Elf.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Didn't the hunters all tend to play dwarf before as well in here, just purely for that third boss? I would assume that that's what you would want to do, especially on Tyrannical. So we're gonna have to see whether or not they have that completely planned out. Right now, of course, there is a mechanic with that third boss where you can see where the boss is facing before the bleed debuff goes out and like pre-turtle it. But that's incredibly finicky and requires you to be spread out so you can see where the boss is facing. But it's definitely possible, especially for a team like Wunderbar.
Yeah, it might be possible that they just turtle the debuff off. We'll see as they are now moving on to the next trash pack. While Goosey Bat is now engaging Machimba. They did the Machimba room pretty cleanly on their side as well. So they're not that far behind when it comes to execution in this room, but overall they're one whole boss behind. So just they lost a little bit of time everywhere a little bit. I don't think there's one specific thing they did much slower compared to Wunderbar outside of that first boss room pull. It just looks like they did everything just slightly slower, and of course they also played Stemrak, the Obelisk, which cost them a little bit of time as well compared to Wunderbar just skipping all of the Obelisks so far.
Yep, and once this first trash pack is dealt with, we'll very likely see the general skip that we saw perfected at the end of the previous season, where everyone except for one person will be straight running through all of this trash with the speed pot as well as their camouflager and Vizpot, and going to the final boss. One person looks like it's going to be actually looks like it's 3 people doing it.
It's 2 people.
This might be like
a
a
safety thing.
It's a safety thing. Like if
Yeah.
one of the hunters go down, they can have 2 people here. One of these hunters will pull the boss, and then everyone else will get pulled out of that realm into the boss room. So this is just a safety thing for sure with the 2 hunters. Yep,
Yeah, I
there we
think I
go.
like that because if one hunter goes down, Xalia could just rest that hunter from inside the realm, and then you still have the other hunter. I guess it would work either way. Not really sure, because if you rest someone inside the Nyalotha realm, they always spawn outside. So in theory, even if something would go wrong, they could rest the one person. Not really sure why they chose to do the double hunter, but we can ask them later to see why they made this decision. And now we see them fight Kula, so let's see how they deal with that Severing Axe. Let's see. It looks like Gingy turtled, so I assume he already skipped one of those debuffs.
Yeah, for sure. That was a perfect. And actually, you can see this. The hunters are spread out completely across the room in a triangle, so that. And then also you have Now and Xalia stacking on top of each other, away from every one of them, so that when the boss turns to throw the Severing Axe, the hunters can see, oh, it's facing me. I need to pre-turtle this. It's really important that you pre-turtle it. It deflects the debuff. If you turtle afterwards, you only get the damage reduction. The bleed debuff stays on you. So, yeah, perfect execution from them there. That was awesome to see. Now, the thing about the 2 hunters here as well is that it's not really that much of a loss, right? You lose your potion cooldown for the first boss, but one of the sort of gimmicks of this council fight is that if you drop cooldown, if you drop combat, so you feign death in between each boss, you're actually not in boss combat. So your potion cooldown resets, your potion timer resets, and you can repot for each boss. So they don't really lose much by doing the 2 hunter thing either.
Yeah, this is just very well done, and those small little things that they're doing here, this is really what matters, right? You have, even if it doesn't save you a lot of time, but even if it's just a couple of seconds, it really matters in the MDI setting. And if you have those 2 weeks to practice, we really want to see those kind of things. So cool to see by Wunderbar that they're doing the skip differently, and also the fact that they did this like triple spread out with the Severing Axe, as you mentioned. It just looked really cool how coordinated they played it. As they're now about to finish off Sanazal, one thing about Sanazal, actually, it is quite a bit annoying to have explosive on this boss, because when the totems spawn, they can also spawn explosive. Because in the past, we've seen teams just ignore the totems except the explosive totem, but they can't really do it this time around, because otherwise you'll just have explosives spawn on the totems, and then it's really hard to deal with it. So that's why they just finished them all off.
Yep, super clean from them here, and if they choose to with this Akali the Conqueror here, they can actually just feign death pretty much every single one of these barrel throughs, but not going to do that, just going to eat the damage. That's a Tyrannical 21 charge that only did about 20 to 30% of their HP, so very clean from them there. Not much to worry about. Of course, you can feign death, make them recast it, but they just don't need to, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they want to feign death it. Maybe they decided, oh, there we go, Fragments is feign deathing just as I said they're not doing it. Maybe it's just, maybe they just roll a dice and see what happens. As
They're
one
just
more
trolling
charge.
us.
Yeah, they probably are. As they're about to finish up Akali, so it is tyrannical, so the mini boss will probably not be a big problem for them. We've seen this dungeon on 45 and it caused some issues for tanks to be able to tank Shadow Soul, which does a lot of magic damage to the tank. But on tyrannical, it really shouldn't be a big deal. And after Shadow Soul, they doesn't look like they need a lot of percentage because they also have the 4 obelisks still that will give them extra percentage as well.
Yep, Wunderbar now gearing up for this incredibly dangerous pull here. The 5-pack on top of the 2 Berserkers. This is a lot of potential damage coming out here. Those Severing Blade debuffs from the Berserkers here can do a lot of damage, especially if they all stack on now here. So got to keep on eye on that red debuff on his player frame in the top center of the screen. If that red debuff goes up to 1 or 2, it could be dangerous, but looks like they've got it figured out. Of course, you can soak that with Hunter Pets. Just you lose a pet, but you can always just resummon it. Now everything in that Raging Affix just gets ring a piece back. No big deal for Wunderbar, making everything look just so easy.
Yeah, that actually looked really easy and everything died so incredibly fast. And yeah, as you mentioned, just dealt with those debuffs with the bleed effect so incredibly well. Even with Nao not even starting to kite, he was just standing in that corner. You saw the Ring of Peace come out to help separate the mobs a little bit. And I assume they just used those Hunter taunts to get the debuffs on them. And yeah, it was incredibly well done. As they're now engaging Shadow Soul, they just want to make sure they're dispelling or soothing off the enrage effect because mini bosses are enraging as well, which can cause some issues now and then. But with the Triple Hunter, it really shouldn't be a big deal as they're all as they are stacking up in melee range, except the 3 Hunters.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be wrong here. My memory sometimes escapes me, but did we see them do 4 Awakened mobs in the regular season? I know they did it definitely in time trials. But I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if we saw all 4 Awakened mobs with the final boss, especially on Tyrannical in our original 3 cups. Maybe our analyst or host could back us up on that afterwards. But this is going to be incredibly dangerous here when we get to the final boss, right? Tyrannical, 21 King Dazar, with all 4 Awakened mobs at the exact same time. This is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, this is going to be really hard. And as we mentioned before, they're not running dwarves. That means if they get the multiple fears from Samrak, it's going to be hard for them to get rid of those, right? Because they don't have the dwarf racial. They do have Turtle to get rid of one of the fears, and they also have the revival from Celia, which has now been used for the first set of debuffs. We also see those Hunter Pets, the Core Hounds, taunting the Spirit Breaker to make sure the debuff is not going on now, because not only does it do a lot of initial damage, but it also increases damage taken by all other sources, and therefore they want to make sure it doesn't go on now. And now we see them just making sure they're positioning the pools on the floor in the perfect order as well, to make sure they're not getting feared into those.
We saw Void Over Mouth there going down first. Of course, they are going to be running out of interrupts quickly with a triple ranged interrupt comp, and they're not running the Skitra Bow again to reduce the cooldown of their abilities. So that's a 24-second interrupt. So, of course, Void Over Mouth are going down first. Looks like Beckoner of Chaos is going to be going down second for them, removing those fear circles so that they don't have to worry about that extra damage going out in the group. And then once those down, they'll go through the Blood of the Corruptor just to make sure that they have more room in the Ruby Kite. Of course, with Urgroth left, they can just pet taunt the rest of those Tank Buster abilities should they choose to. And just, yeah, perfect execution again from Wunderbar here. They just have everything down pat.
Yeah, and this is so incredibly difficult just because there's so many different things you need to manage, right? If you're one of the hunters, you need to make sure you taunt Urgroth on the Spirit Breaker before it starts casting. If you taunt it mid-cast, it's too late because it snapshots the target, right? So you want to make sure you taunt it in the right moment. You want to make sure you dodge Riban's Hunting Leap, which probably close to one-shots you, his frontal here, on Tyrannical. And then on top of that, you also want to make sure you position properly to make sure the pools spawn in the correct order. You want to dodge those tornadoes, you want to interrupt Void Weaver, and not only that, with Void Weaver, they have the longer cooldowns on interrupt because they're the hunters, right? They don't have the melee interrupt timer. So some of the casts need to be let through, and they need to make sure they time it perfectly. Some of them probably went through on Now when he had the Spell Reflect ready to be able to interrupt all of the other casts. So just incredibly well done, well executed by Wunderbar.
And with Tizala down, that's pretty much all she wrote. Dungeon should be completely done for Wunderbar with the boss sub 40%. They're entering the final phase. The only real dangerous thing left is going to be those blade combos on the tank. But come on, you've got now one of the best warriors in the world tanking this boss. He's definitely not going to be going down.
I think he should be totally fine. It looks like they are missing 4% enemy forces, but I think this is just an observer bug because sometimes Shadow of Seoul doesn't get added to the percentage in the observer feed. So they definitely should have 100%. It's just a mistake with the percentage here. So once King Desire goes down, they are done with the dungeon.
Yep, like you said, Shadow of Seoul worth that 4% that's missing here. Wunderbar, 2 0-death dungeons in this initial series, showing everyone right away that they're here to play, that perplexed boss in Cup 3 was a fluke, and people are going to have to bring their absolute best game to have any chance of competing.
Without question, Wunderbar taking that swift 2-0, and great call there, Nagura. That extra 4% of trash was just the Shadow of Azul. Bit of an section on our side, but Wunderbar takes that swift victory, and this is about what we were expecting as well, Ted.